It's 20 degrees in the middle of February in Rochester. Nothing's growing out right now, so the only thing to do in the kitchen is make some bread. This is the sourdough starter. It comes from flour, water, and a source of wild yeast that makes up a colony inside of it. This is juniper that I foraged locally, and you can see a little bit of white powder on the skin. That's all naturally occurring yeast. Now I'm going to add about 3/4 of a cup of water. And it's really important to make sure that the water and the sourdough starter are around the same temperature, so that way it doesn't really shock the yeast. Stretch and fold. This is great not only for building the gluten, but it's also working oxygen into the dough, giving the yeast a better chance to rise, reproduce. I think the process of sourdough is pretty cool because up until after it's baked even, it's a living organism. The yeast that we captured from the wild foraged juniper takes on a terroir, or a taste of the place where it's from. It's getting a lot harder at this point to do the stretch and fold, which is a good sign. That means the gluten's developing. You can see I can almost form it into a ball. It'll hold its shape a little bit. So I'm going to let this rest for about 4 hours, stretching and folding it once every 30 minutes, and then we'll put it into a banneton. The dough has come together a lot more. It's a lot more elastic. It forms what we call a baker's window, where you can see the gluten has really developed and is holding its shape. So that way when it bakes in the oven, it creates all those nice pockets and gets you a nice, open, airy crumb. Now I'm just shaping it into a rough sphere. I'm going to give it a light dusting of flour and kind of get some on the board as well. We're going to go into what's called the final shaping. And this is the most crucial step if you want your bread to really pop with the oven spring. I'm going to fold it over. I hope you didn't blink because that was it. Now what I'm doing is kind of pulling the sides down and under with my hands while rotating it. And now if you look at the skin here, it's formed that nice gluten network, and it's going to retain its shape very nicely. Then we're going to take the side, that nice skin that we formed, we're going to put that down right in the middle of the banneton. Then at the end, I like to give it just a little bit of a facelift. Really help keep that outer skin taut. Now this will go into the fridge for about 8 hours, up to 12. And that really gives it a chance to develop a lot of flavor without it overproofing. There's all different ways you can score the bread. If you're in more of a high volume setting, you like to stick to simple methods that still look nice. But if you're just doing one loaf at home, or even a couple, I like to add in some accents. The real reason you do this is so you can control the places that the bread cracks when it rises in the oven. We call that the oven spring. We've preheated the oven to about 450. I like to put the Dutch oven in there right when I start preheating to reduce stress on it. I'm going to check back on it in 20 minutes. Alright, this is the most nerve-wracking part because you're seeing the bread for the first time. You're seeing it if it rose or if you messed up with the surface tension or anything like that. So looks like it didn't puff up too much. I'm gonna leave the lid on and cook it for another 10 minutes. A little bit more. It's a little bit more pronounced. I think that I underproofed this dough. That's just gonna go in there until it's golden brown. Now I'm gonna flip this out. Oh. Shit. Fuck. There's no good way to do that. Didn't turn out as good as I would have liked it to. I think it could have spent more time rising in the fridge because the middle is kind of sunken in. I think if it had more time to rise, it would really poof up in the middle. But I still think when we cut into this, it's going to be really good. You can tell that the bread was underproofed because there's only a couple big holes. With a normal loaf, it would be a lot of big holes and not as many small ones.